Hello from Westminster Presbyterian Church. This is Thursday's midday meditation. Um, I have another meeting that starts at noon, so I'm starting this a little early. Last night, during our adult education time, we had a very lively conversation about the gospel story chosen for this Sunday by the lectionary, and that is from John 20. And because there's so much in there, I would like to talk about the same text again today. So I'm going to be reading from John 20, verses 19 until verse 29. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As God sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sin, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now, Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hands into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your fingers here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. And do not be unbelieving, but believing." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." So in our discussion last night, Pastor West noted that no matter the lectionary rotation, which changes every 3 years, this story, or it changes every year and repeats every 3 years. This story, known to us as Doubting Thomas, comes back every year on the second Sunday of Easter. So Easter and the belief of Jesus' resurrection and doubt, it seems they come hand in hand. Now, as I mentioned, this story is known to us as the story of Doubting Thomas, and generally we understand it as a rebuke to Thomas. So I want to read it a little differently today. And the first fact I want to point out is that all of the disciples were in fear and doubt, and not only Thomas. So the Easter season can sometimes seem to leave little room for our doubts, our fears, and pain, and we tend to forget that for the first disciples, there was a lot of fear, doubt, and pain, and confusion after the death of Jesus and before they understood and they had the knowledge and the joy of the resurrection. So 1 week after Jesus appeared to his disciples, they were gathered once again behind locked doors. Remember that, and that's when Thomas was with them. And that suggests that Thomas was not the only one who was still needing reassurance that Jesus had in fact conquered death. And I think we relate to that a lot. I think we're not very different today, even after we've heard that Jesus is risen. Just 1 week later, there are anxiety and fear in our lives that betray our own disbelief. So, the second part of this text that I want to talk about, the second misconception, has to do with the culmination of this text, which is the last verse, verse 29. "Blessed are those who did not see and yet believed." This is often read as a judgment on Thomas, who should have believed the testimony of his friends rather than wanting his own experience of the resurrected Jesus. That's how we traditionally read it. So I just want to ask here, when the text says, "Blessed are those who did not see and believe," who is the text speaking of? Clearly, not any of the disciples who had already received that same advantage that now Thomas is receiving. At first, the disciples did not accept the testimony of the woman who went to the tomb and said the tomb was empty, and nor the message of the angels who said he's not here, but he's risen, right? But Jesus had to appear to them. They had to have their own experience in order to believe his resurrection. So I would like us to reconsider uh, our interpretation of this verse. Actually, Jesus does not deny Thomas a blessing, but contrarily, he blesses him by appearing to him and by offering him to touch his hands and his sides. And he offers to help Thomas overcome his deepest fears and doubts, right? Um, so maybe that verse is not a judgment, but a reassurance that the first generation Christians who saw Jesus in person have no advantage over the many later generations of Christians who have not. Just as it is a reassurance that the other disciples have no other advantage over Thomas. Um, and Jesus does not say that those who have not seen will be more blessed than those who have seen, but just that they will be blessed, right? So there's a blessing for everyone, and those who believe and those who doubt, those who have seen and those who have not seen. And I think this text has given us all permission to name our doubts and also our fears. And I also think that we cannot solve not knowing by just believing, right? And those who doubt should have space to doubt. And there's affirmation in this text that doubt is okay, and there's a place for doubt, and we still receive the blessing. Um, Friends, God welcomes but also invites our curiosity. Jesus satisfies Thomas's curiosity rather than condemning it. And the natural thing to do when we're feeling anxious or threatened is to hunker down and lock the doors, to become focused on our own security rather than the risky mission to which we are called. And I think, I mean, in these days, we are literally locked in by our fears. That makes it easier for us to relate to the first disciples and to Thomas. The promise of this text, however, is that Jesus can neither be stopped by our locked doors nor by our doubts. But he comes to us just as he came to the first disciples and to Thomas, right in the midst of our fear, pain, doubt, and confusion. And he comes speaking peace and breathing into our anxious lives the breath of the Holy Spirit. And for us, we are very grateful. Uh, More on this in Pastor Wes's sermon this Sunday. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week.